She's been called the Rosa Parks of the American Indian movement. Charlene Teters. As an artist and on the front lines, she challenges us to look at the impact of Native American stereotypes. Next on Colores.
I grew up in Spokane, Washington, and married a Colville man. I often say that at that time I was a good Indian woman. My whole lifestyle was around my children, around my family, around doing traditional art forms. And there was a lot of support for women to do that type of work. Very little support to do anything but that. As I began to experiment and do more painting and do more other kinds of work, there wasn't the support there. In fact, I was beginning to kind of trample on what was traditionally a male domain. So it was, you know, the beginning to sort of trample, you know, and go into other areas that I wasn't welcome.
Welcome to the 1986 graduation ceremonies.
Really, I left the Spokane on the Colville Reservation I wish I could say I went to get an education, but it was more about escaping, you know, an unhappy home life, just completely removing myself from the conditions that are on the reservations, the high alcoholism and alcohol and drug dependencies and related deaths. And when I look back at that time, it's like I could very easily have become part of the statistics that we all quote. I went to the Institute of American Indian Arts in '84. The transition was not difficult for me. I went from an Indian community to another community where there was a large population of Native people. And it was very comfortable, and it was very nurturing place to go. My work was really a concentration in painting, and actually the very romanticized images of women as the center of the culture, the keeper of the culture, that it was a way of retaking and reclaiming my identity as a Native woman, and to give some integrity back to that identity. From there, I was recruited by the University of Illinois to participate in their program. And they recruited 3 of us, myself, an Osage man, and a Choctaw man. So we thought, this is a great opportunity, and it was really with a great deal of excitement that we had began this journey to the Midwest. And we all got there, and immediately we were looking for our community. You know, Indian people do that. You look around and say, well, where are the other Native American students? Well, there were none. This is a community that was very, very white, very elite, that there was very few people of color, let alone Native people. The 3 of us going to a community of 36,000 people would have been culture shock in itself. But to be one of 3 Native American students on a college campus that used as their athletic identity a chief mascot made it even more difficult for us. They had so much, invested so much of their own identity in this chief mascot, a very, very stereotypical, romanticized image of Native people, and really resented Native people even challenging their idea of Indians, you know, their idea of who Indian people are. The catalyst for me getting involved in challenging the stereotypical image of Native people in this community was my children. They wanted to go to the basketball game. And so I said, certainly we can go, you know. You need to know, though, that people will wear paint, people will wear feathers, people will dress up like Indians, acting out their negative stereotypes. I work very hard to instill a sense of pride in my children and who they are as Native people. And so they have a real core of understanding of what it is to be a Native person and what those things mean, those things that are central to our identity: paint, feathers, dance, the drum. So I thought that they were pretty secure in their identity. They were in junior high and high school at the time that we were in this community at the University of Illinois. I tried to prepare them for what they would see. But when the halftime event came along and Chief Alinowick came out, and I'd never seen him before, and neither had my children. And he came out and he was wearing a full buckskin regalia. He was wearing 90 eagle feather headdress, and he began to do what was billed as an authentic Indian dance. He began to do what was more like a gymnastics routine, jumping and twirling in the air, touching his toes. And the people began to holler and went into this frenzy, you know, around the Ho Chief dance. And my kids just sank in their seats because they were just so embarrassed and humiliated by that activity out there. I remember that it was a sadness that still won't leave me. What I witnessed in my children was a blow that I could see physically in their face and in their body. They tried to become invisible. They became ashamed, you know, of who they were. They were hoping nobody would know who they are. My son tried to laugh. Like you laugh when you're the butt of the joke. And you don't want people to know that you're hurting. That was the catalyst for me, because I knew that I couldn't be there in that environment and not address it. That it's important to protect the integrity of our cultural identity. That if I didn't stand up and say something, do something, then how will my children know that it's important to protect?
And so I say to America, I want you to remember our past. This past will give you direction for the future. Just as our people in our past, we are the spirit of the future.
I did it in the only way I knew how, which was to stand there with a sign that said, American Indians are human beings, we are not mascots. When I was standing out there, I was afraid, you know, and people did come up and spit on me. People did come up and throw things at me. People did come up and ridicule me, try to make me feel like I'm the one there's something wrong with. It's fear, because they don't care, really. They really don't care about you, and somehow they don't see you as full-fledged human beings. I think that that's dangerous. And if we allow this group of people to be singled out for any kind of treatment, then we're all at risk, all of us, of also it being our turn somewhere down the line to be targeted. Okay, now how do you want me to help you? The work that I've been doing in the last 5 years has been an extension of the work that I've been doing on the front lines of the struggle to remove stereotypes and symbols that reinforce the stereotyping of Native people out there. So in the same way that painters use paint or stone, if you're a sculptor, popular culture is my medium. Installation is a very contemporary form, and basically what you're doing is taking a room, an environment, and then transforming that. So the space itself is the work. It's important for me to have the viewer be part of it, so in that way they can enter the space and not just view it as they would view a painting or sculpture, but become part of the piece and interact with the piece. What I do is collect these things, put it in a context for people to examine them. I think that we become so desensitized to them that we don't really see them for what they are. And so what I'm doing is putting them in a very concentrated space for people to feel the bombardment. The purpose for me is to create a forum for people to debate the issue. And I really don't care which side of the debate they come down on, that people feel like they need to look at it, even think about it for a moment. Then the pieces are successful to me as an artist. If people can think about it while they're in the space, then it's important. I think that every group of people in the country have to deal with their stereotypes. You know, their stereotypes of them as a people, the stereotype of women, the stereotype of even white men. It's kind of human nature in a sense to kind of buy into it or to fall back on these monolithic images of people. As we're talking about the other group of people. And I would say that those images are never positive, even if they intended it to be some kind of positive presentation of those people. To reduce an entire race or group of people to a monolithic image is to devalue that group of people, no matter what. We all are the best representation of ourselves. Whenever you have a misunderstanding or misperception of a people, that does nothing but to build walls, because those people have a struggle to try to tear down those perceptions in order to just be heard. The real people aren't seen as real people because the images in popular culture are just so powerful and completely make us invisible. So I've got the real people in black and white, and then the images from popular culture in these very bright, shiny, candy-coated color images. In putting things over their faces, I am making people look past these objects, past them, to see the real people. So in a sense, it's very painful for me to do this, but I'm trying to get the viewer to feel what it is that we have to overcome in order to be seen and heard. The term redskin is the most derogatory term that you could call Native people. This term is equivalent to nigger. This term has a very violent historical reference to Native people at a time when the United States government had a bounty on Native American people. You could earn money by killing Indians. The tomahawk was the tool that was used to collect the bounty to scalp Native people, and was in fact issued by the United States government for the purpose of scalping Indians so they could collect bounty. And if you brought in the bodies of Indian people, you could collect your bounty. And when it became too cumbersome to bring in the bodies, they would bring in the heads. When it became too cumbersome to bring in the heads, they would bring in the scalps or the red skins of Native people. And that's where this term comes from. This is the image used by Cleveland Indians, and again, I take something that's a direct use by a team and is imposed on a group of people despite their objections. This image should have gone by the wayside along with Little Black Sambo and the Frito Bandito, that this image honors neither Indian or non-Indian people. And that I think anyone who looks at this can recognize it as a blatant racist caricature, and tells you, you know, really, again, our place in the society.
Sure, I love you people. Your blood is the same blood of mine. I don't have nothing against you. I'm not making funny. Hey, baby, you know what? The only fella, hey, darling, the dollars is what I'm concerned with. The dollars is what I'm concerned with, darling. I'm not tired. I'm not tired of doing this. It comes down to one simple thing. Dollars, honey. Money, you know it. You know it. I'm not offended. Hey, brother, please, cut the cameras off. Cut the cameras off.
Often the argument in terms of, you know, changing these images is that it's an issue of money, that somehow they're going to lose support or that it's going to cost too much to change these images. And I just don't believe it. I really don't. I think that they could make a lot of money off of changing these images, and that if it is trivial, as they like to say, then why is there any objection whatsoever to changing these images? I really feel it has more to do with power than it has to do with money. This piece is really a layering of information. On the walls, almost invisible to the naked eye, have the names of tribes that were terminated or exterminated by the United States government. I bought this toilet paper when I was a student at the University of Illinois, and I installed these rolls of toilet paper on the wall that has the names of the exterminated tribes. The title of the piece is called Wiped Out. And what I'm doing basically is just taking things, you know, from popular culture and then making the connection with the real historical events. This piece is called Her Story, which was a recreation of my grandmother's space. My grandmother had 12 children in this house, in this tar paper house, and only 4 lived to be adults. And that was not unusual for Indian people at that time. To me, it symbolized her will to survive. I wanted to, you know, refer to the portrait of my uncle. He served, as many of our young men served in World War I and World War II, for a country where they had no rights. It wasn't until 1954 that we were given the right to vote. We're talking about Native people still fighting for very basic rights that other Americans take for granted. We had built this whole our whole mythology around America that, you know, is about, really, it's about some of the qualities that we all want to have. It's about being honorable. It's about standing alone. It's about standing for truth. It's about standing for human rights. You know, that's the myth that we are, you know, but I think when we take a really harsh look at who we really are, that America has to come to terms with its history in terms of its relationship to Native people, that they completely disregarded, you know, a continent of nations that occupied this land. They had to dehumanize those people in order to remove them from the land, and they did that through genocide. This piece is called American Holocaust. It's meant to be a visual reference to the Wounded Knee Memorial in South Dakota, where over 300, mostly women and children, were killed at the hands of the 7th Cavalry. And we are told and taught within the school system and constantly reminded to remember the Holocaust that went on in Nazi Germany, and we should. But my point in the piece is that we should also remember the Holocaust that happened in America. The genocide that happened on this continent is the most complete and continued process of genocide that's ever happened in the history of the world. That 2 million Native Americans were killed on this continent. I think it's closer to 20 million, and that may still be on the low side. Millions of people who no longer exist, whose nations were completely wiped out. The most complete genocide in the history of the world happened on this continent. Ignorance is our biggest enemy out there. Out there, I mean everywhere. The battle used to be on the battlefield. The battle today is in the classrooms. The battle today is in the courtrooms. And the thing that we're fighting over is our own self-image, our identity. I think it's amazing to me that the battle today is over our image, that we are really trying to reclaim ourself. We're trying to reclaim our history, our culture, our spiritual items, and our images. It's about self-determination. It's about self-identification and you respecting us on our own terms. Until we have that, we'll never have equal voice or equal rights in this country. I think in order to begin to heal ourselves, if we're going to survive on this planet, to come to some basic understanding, you know, how can we understand people when we don't listen, when we aren't hearing them, or when we try to trivialize what it is that they are trying to communicate or say. You know, our elders talk about that as part of our prophecy, that there has to be a respect, and once we lose that, it begins to be a process of destruction. Even the smallest voice, we must pay attention to that voice and respect them, because maybe within them there is some information that we need to survive as a people, as humankind. That it's not easy. It really isn't. So we have to consciously be aware of those things, consciously do that and remind ourselves and remind those people who kind of step out and are disrespectful that it may be the end of humankind if we don't pay attention to those voices around us. I don't think that any one group has all the answers to anything. You know, and basically we've been operating as if one group of people has all the answers. I think we have to see each other as the same thing. We have to all realize that we all have a responsibility to begin to deconstruct these things that separate us. And that it's all our responsibility. It's not just a Native American issue. It's not just those people's issue or those people over there deal with their issues. That we all have a responsibility to not just hear it, but to act on it. It's Eastern Cherokee made. We see examples of Indian people acting out the stereotypes in order to have some kind of acceptance. People participating in their own oppression. We have to first challenge the confusion within our own communities in order to be healthy again. We have people who are suffering from internalized racism and internalized sexism and all the other stuff that we're all dealing with, and have basically taken what is reflected by the dominant society or the expectations, and if you can't meet that something's wrong with you. And so we have a lot of people who are doing all kinds of things to try to overcome, you know, so-called their weaknesses because they don't measure up somehow. The first thing you need to do is to accept yourself as who you are. I think it's key to being just healthy. If we're talking about the health of our larger communities, self-acceptance is key. Those things that are unique to them, that make them human, are important, and that it's important for them to stand up for that.
The massacres that happened to us, the army that came, took our land and killed our people, did not destroy our vision for a strong future.
Originally, the stand that I took was for my children, and it was from a very personal place that I began to take that stand alone because I felt I had to. That stand has grown into a national movement to remove these mascots and images and stereotypes of Native American people out there. So the work is how I empower myself. I've seen people who have never been involved in anything political come and experience my work and walk away empowered because it has a way of reversing the roles of those who have power and those who do not. And they come away feeling empowered by experiencing that and encourage that they can make a difference, that one person can make a difference. And I think that that's important.
For a copy of this Colores program, send $35, which includes shipping and handling, to KNME TV, 1200 University Boulevard Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87102, or call 1-800-328-5663.